Archibald Frazer-Nash started building cycle cars with his friend Ronald Godfrey at the beginning of the 20th century, and by 1909 they were selling them under the name Godfrey-Nash, or simply GN. Early models were powered by a V-twin, initially provided by JAP or Peugeot, but they were building their own 1100cc V-twin engines by 1911. The cars weighed less than 400 pounds, allowing them to reach speeds above 60. In 1913, the engine was turned sideways, so the heads would protrude out the sides of the car, and two GNs would be entered in the Cycle Car Grand Prix that same year, one driven by Nash himself. GN managed to produce 200 cars before World War I, and an additional 4,000 after the war, not including the 1,600 built in France under license. But cycle cars were falling from favor, and by 1921, Godfrey-Nash was in receivership. New owners tried to transition the brand to more mainstream designs and away from the light sporty models, and soon both Godfrey and Nash would leave the company. But Nash continued to develop his own designs under his own name, Frazer-Nash, so as not to be confused with the unrelated American Nash. The early sport touring and super sport would be some of the most successful models, with nearly 200 being built. The cars were on 99 or 105-inch wheelbases, and the engines were outsourced, primarily 1500cc inline fours from Anzani or Meadows. But Nash was a better engineer than a businessman, and the company would go through a series of different owners in the late 1920s, with Nash staying on as the technical advisor, and the company becoming AFN in 1927, and eventually to be taken over by the Aldington brothers in 1929, although the cars would still be badged as Frazer-Nash, and the company would build its reputation, once again, around light, sporty, chain-drive cars, the Sport Top being a superlight, cloth-bodied version of the early Falcon. All models were limited production, sometimes not even making it into double digits, or a second year, usually named for their most recent racing success, such as the TT replica for the 1932 Trophy Touring. The first six-cylinder models arrived in 1932, a 1700cc overhead cam engine provided by Blackburn. Starting in 1934, Frazer-Nash became the official importer of BMW into Britain, badging the cars as Frazer-Nash BMW. They even made a BMW-powered Falcon for 1937. And naturally, production was disrupted by the Second World War. But as World War II began to wind down, AFN would be taken over by Bristol Aircraft, who used Frazer-Nash licenses for BMW to begin producing cars of their own, based primarily on the BMW 327, creating some legal questions that were perhaps not looked into too seriously due to the war. But the Frazer-Nash cars would also become BMW-based, but on the sportier 328, putting an end to the chain-drive sports cars from before the war, but continuing to produce limited production sports cars intended for racing. And interestingly enough, the cars were referred to as having Bristol drivetrains, even though Bristol got those drivetrains by acquiring Frazer-Nash. The first and most successful post-war Frazer-Nash was the Le Mans replica, originally called the high-speed or competition model, renamed for their success at Le Mans. It was 151 inches long, ran on a 96-inch wheelbase, and weighed 1,400 to 1,500 pounds. Approximately 35 would be made between 1947 and 1953, over which time the 2-liter Bristol engine ranged from 100 to 140 horsepower. It would soon be joined by a full-bodied version, initially called the Fast Touring, but soon to become the Mille Miglia, in honor of their win there, a car that would evolve into the Targa Florio of 1952 to 1954, initially offered in 100 horsepower touring and 125 horsepower Grand Sport, with power climbing to around 140 before production ended, the last few getting updated styling. A 52 Grand Sport was capable of a 9-second 0 to 60 and a 17-second quarter mile with a top speed over 110, and it would soon be joined by a coupe version called the Le Mans Coupe, for the usual reason. Starting in 1954, they would become an official importer of Porsche, and new cars would be limited to a few prototypes, such as the Continental and the DKW Special Sports Car, as they were also now a DKW importer. But post-war production only totaled 85 cars, and soon Bristol would be selling off its automotive interests, meaning that Frazer-Nash would become Porsche Great Britain, and eventually to become wholly owned by Porsche, at least what was left of the automotive portion. What remained under the Frazer-Nash name would move into consultancy and development, and in 2009, Frazer-Nash would produce a prototype hybrid sports car. So you never know, the brand may yet make a comeback. If you want to have say in what brand I do next, check out the latest poll on my community page. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below and like and subscribe.